Vanadium redox flow batteries are hitting the big time, and I mean big. One of the biggest battery energy storage systems ever is a vanadium redox flow battery that just came online in China, with an even bigger one to come in Switzerland. And there's even more on the way in other countries too. But it raises a couple of questions. Why now, and why are they suddenly catching on everywhere else but North America? I'm Matt Ferrell. Welcome to Undecided. This video is brought to you by Ground News. This is a vanadium redox flow battery, or VFRB. They play nice with solar, and this one can fit in your garage. And I wish I had one in mine. But flow batteries scale up really well too. This one here is a 51 megawatt facility in Hokkaido, Japan, and it was the biggest in the world when it opened in 2022. However, at the end of 2024, it has been dwarfed by Ronca Power's own Jinhua Wuxi energy storage project in Xinjiang, northwest China. At 175 megawatts and 700 megawatt hours of storage, it's currently the largest battery storage system of its kind. But soon an even bigger VFRB will be online. Ronca's monster is set to be overshadowed by a VFRB starting construction this year in Switzerland. Part of a massive telecom facility, this VFRB clocks in at 500 megawatts and 1.2 gigawatt hours of storage. This is a pretty meteoric rise for vanadium battery tech. So how does it work, and where did it come from? And maybe more importantly, why has it exploded in popularity in just the last few years? Now, broadly speaking, redox flow batteries work by having two large tanks, one with a positively charged electrolyte solution and one with a negatively charged solution. Now, both these tanks are connected to a central chamber or stack. And when we pump our electrolyte solution to the stack, we get an ion exchange or redox effect as one side reduces and the other oxidizes. When charging, we put electricity into the battery, and this causes ions to move from the positive side of the membrane to the negative side. Now, the redox process is reversible, so the stored energy is released as ions and electrons return to their original states, generating a usable electric current. Vanadium wasn't the OG flow battery though. That honor goes to the zinc flow battery, patented all the way back in 1879. Now, I've got a video on that if you're interested. Not a whole lot was done with that until the energy crisis saw a surge in interest in renewables and alternative battery technologies. NASA experimented with redox flow batteries in general, but its efforts weren't very successful. Others weren't having much luck either, because we just didn't have good enough membrane tech or electrolyte solutions. Then, in the 1980s, researchers at the University of New South Wales in Australia successfully demonstrated vanadium redox flow chemistry using vanadium dissolved in sulfuric acid. And just like that, we had another promising electrolyte. There was another boom of interest, and the university patented the tech and licensed it to a few companies. So what makes vanadium interesting? Well, it's a bit of a weirdo, kind of like me. It likes to both give and receive ions, giving multiple charge or oxidation states. In fact, vanadium batteries rely on vanadium not having one, not two, but four different possible charge or oxidation states. Two of them are more positive and two of them are more negative. Now, chemically, this is very strange and means that we can use vanadium for both the positive and negative sides of the flow battery. Most flow batteries require two distinct solutions, which can result in them bleeding over the membrane and hampering the battery's efficiency and lifespan. Vanadium doesn't have to worry about that. I also imagine it makes the supply chain a little easier if you have to source one less electrolyte solution. Still, these batteries remained pretty niche and underutilized for several years. But 2006 would see several VFRB patents expire, and plenty of organizations spent serious time and money developing VFRBs. That same year, the US Department of Energy's Pacific Northwest National Laboratory started R&D on their VFRB formula. By 2012, this led to a new and improved vanadium-based electrolyte formulation that was twice as powerful as similar mixtures. Soon, VFRB technology made its way from the lab to real life, aided by the growth of solar and wind power. Adoption was slow initially, but with companies like Ronca Power announcing some big plans for the technology, the race was on. So what has Ronca Power done with VFRBs? Well, as I mentioned earlier, a lot. At 175 megawatts and 700 megawatt hours, the company's facility is the largest VFRB on the planet, which also makes it the biggest flow battery on the planet. That's at least until that Swiss facility begins construction this year, but I'll get to that in a moment. And this isn't Ronca Power's only big VFRB. The company is behind another, smaller, but still huge 100 megawatt, 400 megawatt hour Dalian system. Back in June of 2024, Ronca reported that the Dalian facility completed the world's first black start test of a large-scale thermal power system. Now, a black start involves restoring power to the grid following a total blackout. It's an important safety measure that demonstrates that the VFRB can provide enough energy even when total disaster strikes. So why is China investing so much in giant VFRBs? Well, as Uncle Ben once said, with green power comes green responsibility. And that responsibility is storage. China aims to be the world leader in renewable energy. But as you dive into topics like renewable energy and new technologies, it's important to have diverse and credible sources of information. My team and I always strive to find the best sources, but misinformation and bias exist in all reporting, which is why I'm excited to have Ground News as a sponsor. Created by a former NASA engineer, Ground News gathers news from over 50,000 sources, analyzing political bias, credibility, and even financial incentives behind the coverage. A great example is this story around the recent news on DeepMind's AI weather modeling and forecasting. With one click, I see a summary, political bias, ownership details, and factuality breakdown of every source that's reporting on it. I can even sort by factuality to find the most reliable info. For instance, this center-leading source highlights the accuracy, while this next one shows the research paper's very matter-of-fact headline, followed by a right-leaning source hitting on how Google is the source of this research. And as someone who watches my videos, you probably like digging deeper into the facts to understand the bigger picture. And one of my favorite features is the blind spot feed, which reveals stories underreported by one side of the political spectrum. It's helped me recognize blind spots and see the nuance in different stories. I also follow topics like sustainability, environment, and science, helping me to cut through the political bias in sustainable tech coverage, which is often heavy on opinion over fact. For a limited time, you can get this very same plan that I use every day for nearly half the price. Just go to ground.news/undecided or scan the QR code to save 40% off their Vantage plan. I only promote brands that I trust, and I think that you'll find Ground News just as valuable as I do. Thanks to Ground News and to all of you for supporting the channel. So back to why China is investing so much into giant VFRBs. Well, part of this drive means constructing massive energy storage facilities to work in tandem with massive renewable energy generators. Now, as we've discussed in previous videos, a lot of emissions-free power has the downside of being intermittent. The sun isn't always shining, the wind isn't always blowing. You know the deal. Now, before Ranka Power, the biggest VFRB could be found in Japan's Hokkaido region. Hokkaido gets a ton of wind, so naturally the Hokkaido Electric Power Network has invested in a robust wind turbine system. But they wondered what the best way was to store all that wind power for later. Well, ultimately it's settled on Sumitomo Electric Industries as a massive VFRB system. At 51 megawatts, this setup uses 130 10,000-gallon vanadium redox tanks. That's more than enough VFRBs to power 27,000 Japanese homes for 4 hours. That's about what you're going to get from a grid-scale lithium battery energy storage system. Though Sumitomo Electric says it expects future projects will aim to double that duration to 8 to 10 hours. And that's a big deal, as that's what you'd need to cover for solar panels during the night or to give wind turbines a lot of wiggle room between gusts. Now, the project has been so successful that Sumitomo has gone on to install similar VFRB systems all over the world, including Belgium, Australia, and even California. So let's talk about this soon-to-be biggest VFRB facility. Swiss telecommunications company FlexBase is building a 20,000 square meter data center in Laufenburg, Switzerland. Data centers take a lot of energy, so FlexBase wants to offset that with tons of green energy and green energy storage. And to that end, the company is set to begin construction on a 500 megawatt, 1.2 gigawatt hour VFRB, which is going to be the biggest in the world. The campus will also generate some of its own power with an 8,400 square meter solar panel system. Now, FlexBase is also planning to use its waste heat as part of the Laufenburg's district heating network. Now, Laufenburg was chosen as the home for the facility for a reason. The town is right across the Rhine River from Germany and also sits near the original connection point for the electricity grids of France, Germany, and Switzerland. Now, this network node was decommissioned in 1958, but the location is still critical for the distribution of green electricity in Europe's interconnected grid. But as promising as they may be, flow batteries are just as vulnerable to economics as any other new technology. Back in March of 2024, Horizon also announced it was preparing to test RedFlow's zinc bromide flow battery, but the project didn't make it very far. By October 2024, RedFlow went belly up. It's a painful example of how precarious the green tech business can be. Clearly, VFRB tech works great for grid-scale storage, but why? Now, I've covered this previously, so I'll keep this very brief, but flow batteries are great at large-scale projects primarily because they're so easy to scale up. You need more juice? Just get bigger tanks. You might be sitting there saying, well, no duh, but stuff in the electrochemical world is rarely that simple. Look at some of the other emerging battery technologies, and the simplicity of scaling up a VFRB seems almost too good to be true. If you want to adjust the capacity of most of the other battery systems, lithium included, you're just buying additional batteries. You want to double the capacity, you have to double the number of battery packs. Power output and energy storage scale together. VFRBs can scale those separately between the tanks, which is the storage, and the stack, which is the power. VFRBs, of course, have their own perks aside from being a flow battery. Now, we've already mentioned that vanadium is a strange substance with 4 different oxidation states, which makes it really convenient and efficient in a redox battery. That's the big one, but there's other benefits too. The electrolyte solution isn't flammable, and it isn't sensitive to extreme temperature fluctuations. That kind of safety is important, especially in wildfire-prone regions. Another small but useful perk is that VFRBs can stay discharged for as long as you need them to be without degrading. Their simple chemical formulas and benign chemical reactions give them extremely long lifespans. We're talking upwards of 15,000 to 20,000 cycles. By some accounts, that's 5 times longer than lithium. Sumitomo claims that its VFRB will last at least 20 years. That also helps to contribute to their low LCOE or levelized cost of energy. And generally, VFRBs are going to have a cheaper LCOE than lithium systems. When a VFRB does finally kick the bucket, most of that vanadium can be recycled into a new VFRB. US Vanadium demonstrated its ability to recycle 97% of the electrolyte from a decommissioned VFRB. And Sumitomo took spent VFRB's electrolyte from a battery that was in service for a decade, then processed it and repurposed it for use in a different VFRB. The company says it's been working effectively in its new home since 2012. And to be fair, these examples are isolated showcases, far from a fully functional VFRB recycling system, but they do highlight the recycling potential of vanadium. Of course, vanadium batteries aren't without their drawbacks. Let's just get the first and most obvious one out of the way. They're big. It's great for grid-scale energy storage and maybe a potential option for residential storage, but not something that you're going to see inside of an EV or a laptop. VFRBs also have a relatively poor round-trip efficiency, or RTE. That's the measure of how much electricity that you can store in a battery and then actually pull out later. When VFRB cells are small, they have a pretty good RTE at about 85 to 90%. But once you get to kilowatt scale, that number drops to 57 to 75% due to hydraulic losses and shunt currents. Not ideal for a technology that we want to use in massive energy storage systems. As for the question as to why we aren't seeing a lot of vanadium batteries here in the US, vanadium has a serious supply chain bottleneck. 75% of the global vanadium supply comes to us as a byproduct from just 10 steel mills in China and Russia. Other countries like the United States and Australia produce some vanadium, but not enough. Vanadium is often found in iron ores used in steel making. With steel being easily recyclable, little vanadium is being produced here in the US. If we want to build massive VFRB facilities like the kind that we've been talking about today, we may need alternate sources of vanadium. Then again, there are some significant vanadium deposits in the United States that are largely untapped. Now this plays into another VFRB issue, which is the upfront cost. Vanadium is twice as expensive as lithium. Now that can be offset by their long lifespan and their low cost of maintenance. However, the high initial cost and their newness on the market make VFRBs an expensive risk to a lot of investors. And again, massive facilities will take massive amounts of vanadium. Anyone out there willing to offer a Costco-style bulk discount? Well, these are some of the reasons why, despite vanadium's strengths, you might choose other flow battery chemistries like zinc bromide or hydrogen bromine. If vanadium is the problem, then just ditch vanadium, right? Of course, these batteries have their own issues, but that's a topic for another video, maybe like the one I did over here. So where does that leave VFRBs on the technology readiness level? Well, high score for sure, maybe as far as a 9. They're out there and they're working right now, providing hundreds of megawatts to people across the globe. It's a proven technology with a well-defined niche. As we continue to decarbonize, it's possible that VFRBs will become even more popular. It's pretty heartening to see some of the massive facilities already working and even bigger ones on the way, but I need to caution against unbridled optimism here. Despite the successes of VFRBs in China and Japan, there's still no guarantee that all these announced new facilities will complete construction. Still, these early, full-scale successes are pretty exciting. But what do you think? Do you think that we'll see more of these in the US and elsewhere? Jump in the comments and let me know what you think. And be sure to listen to my follow-up podcast, Still to be Determined, will keep this conversation going. Thanks as always to my patrons for your continued support and helping to keep the channel going. Keep your mind open, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.